Yeah, so far so good.
Okay, so maybe let me start again. So I'm Adrian from Independent Reserve. Independent Reserve is a Bitcoin exchange operating in Australia. We've been operating out of Sydney since late 2014. We launched in, I think, October 2014, and we've been basically operating ever since. So most of our user base is from Australia, and probably about 80% of our users are based in Australia, and about maybe 15% from New Zealand, and the rest from all over the world. So we trade Bitcoin and Ether on a multi-currency order book that consists of AUD, USD, and NZD. And what our order book allows us to do is basically merge the liquidity across all three of those currencies onto one order book, which basically allows us to serve the New Zealand market a lot more, I guess, a lot more effectively than we could if we had order books explicitly for AUD, USD, and NZD, because it means that, for example, a user that's in New Zealand is able to very easily purchase Bitcoin from a person in Australia or in the US without having to worry about converting their NZD into AUD or USD. So our order book basically automatically converts all the orders, no matter in which currency they were placed, into the currency that you're using. So if you're using AUD, you would see all the orders denominated in AUD, even if they may have been originally placed in one of the other currencies. So I guess that's one of the features that distinguishes Independent Reserve from most other exchanges out there, because I think most other exchanges have different order books for all the currencies. Yeah, so that's, I guess, Independent Reserve in a quick intro. Do you guys have any specific questions, or would you like me to go through the questions that you emailed me, which I think I have saved somewhere here?
Yeah, well, we can ask you as we go through.
Yeah, that'll probably be easier.
Answer them as you go. So at the moment, you guys are still in Sydney. Do you have offices other locations?
No, so our office is at the moment in the Sydney CBD, and that's our only office at the moment. I mean, I guess being an online business, hey, is there any way I can turn off the notifications when someone else joins? Because I keep hearing things.
Yep. You go self sound pack save or sounds deactivated. You want something more permanent. Tools, options.
Yep.
Notifications, and then there's like a
Notifications
tab that you can go to sound deactivated.
Play no sounds. Perfect. This will make it easier. Yeah, because I've been hearing noises for the last 5 minutes.
You're the new guy, so everyone wants to poke you.
Yeah, so our only office at the moment is in Sydney. We'll be looking at expanding, I guess, into other areas of the world. We looked into opening up an office in New Zealand, but it's very, very difficult for a Bitcoin exchange to operate in New Zealand, so that didn't quite work out. It actually turned out to be impossible to get an account at any kind of local New Zealand bank. So our NZD account and also our USD account in banks in Australia at the moment. We find this is basically the only place where we've been able to open up a bank account. That's kind of the big challenge that most Bitcoin exchanges have when they try to grow and expand to other areas. It's very difficult to find, relationships with banks, and also the regulatory environment tends to be a little bit different everywhere you go. So it's kind of hard to navigate all those obstacles around the world.
You mentioned that you accept customers worldwide. Do you want to just explain what countries you can accept from and which either states or locations you can't accept customers from?
Sure. So I think the only places where we've been hesitant to accept users were kind of countries in the Middle East. Say, like, every now and then we get a request from a user from like Iraq, for example, and even though there are, I guess, no legal obligations to prevent us from accepting those users, we I guess have to manage our own risk of receiving money from a person in the Middle East, or having to send funds to a country where I guess our banks may see that as being a risky place to send money to. But generally, we accept people from everywhere except for, I guess, as I said, the countries that you may kind of expect to be risky from a AML CTF point of view. And really, that's only because just the banks are very risk averse when it comes to those areas. So we tend to kind of, I guess, make a call on a case-by-case basis for people from kind of risky places. But any kind of place in Europe, the US, Australia, New Zealand, obviously, pretty much anywhere in Asia, in South America, yeah, that's no problem at all. So we have quite a wide range of users that we have on our system, and we don't distinguish between, if you're an American, we don't distinguish between where you're from. So if you're from New York, that's not a problem. I realize there are regulations in New York, but we haven't had any issues about that here in Australia. So yeah, we accept users from anywhere in the US.
Any
what are your
issues with the US?
What was that, sorry?
Any banking issues with the US?
Any banking issues with the US? So our banks are in Australia. So we do have a USD account, but it's held at an Australian bank. I guess like most other Bitcoin exchanges, we've experienced problems sending money overseas every now and then. Sometimes funds don't route in the correct way because SWIFT transfers tend to be a little bit unreliable every now and then. But in general, we haven't experienced any kind of large-scale issues with banks or transferring funds to the US.
Do you just want to explain your KYC AML requirements and whether a new client needs to submit all documents before they make a trade?
Sure. So for clients based in Australia, we do an online verification check where we check your details such as your passport number, driver's license number against a verification provider, and currently we use a company called Truly You. They're a Canadian-based verification company. And we also send a letter in the mail to verify your mailing address. And this basically tends to weed out the cases, where someone uses somebody else's ID. For users internationally, we ask people to upload a photo of themselves holding either their passport or a driver's license. I'm still hearing lots of notification noises, messages, notifications. Sounds deactivated.
What about now?
Okay, yeah.
Do you just want to explain what type of services you provide? Point of sale, ATM machines, debit cards. One of the selling points on your website is you actually mentioned that you can set up self-managed super funds with the company.
Yeah, right. So I guess at the core of things, we're a digital currency exchange. For the self-managed super fund accounts, perhaps that's not clear on our website, but we don't actually create a self-managed super fund for our users, but we allow customers with a self-managed super fund. And I guess for those of you who aren't in Australia, a self-managed super fund is a way to manage your retirement funds yourself. So rather than entrust another person or another entity to manage your retirement funds, it's basically a way to manage the investments for your retirement yourself, and you can pretty much invest your retirement funds in any kind of asset that's been approved to invest your retirement money in. And so if you happen to run a self-managed super fund, we allow you to open up an independent reserve account in the name of your self-managed super fund and then invest your retirement funds into Ethereum or Bitcoin. And this is a product that we launched probably about 12 months ago now, and it's proven to be quite popular. And I guess the main reason for that is because there are different taxation rules for money in a self-managed super fund as opposed to investing with your own personal money. So this is quite attractive for anybody, I guess, who believes in investing in Bitcoin and happens to have it happens to also be one of the people who manage their own retirement funds.
Okay. Do you want to just talk about your current fee structure and your slide and scale?
Yeah, sure. So our fees start at 0.5%, which last time I checked are the lowest fees in Australia. And these can be reduced to 0.1% depending on how much you trade per month. On the help page of our website, there's a table that lists, how much you trade in a 1 month period and how that fee gets reduced. And it's, I'm quite sure it's the lowest fee structure of any exchange in Australia, or it was last time I checked anyway.
Okay. One issue with Australian exchanges is the GST. Could you explain who has to pay the GST and how we pay it?
Sure. So we kind of gotten around that. So the way the taxation law is structured currently in Australia is that if an Australian supplies Bitcoin to another Australian, technically they're supposed to charge a 10% tax on the value of the full Bitcoin that they supplied. However, Independent Reserve doesn't actually supply any Bitcoin. We just provide a marketplace where other people can trade. So we don't charge any GST on the value of the Bitcoin that was sold. We do charge a GST on the fee that we charge. So if we charge a brokerage fee of 0.5%, for example, the 10% GST is already included in that 0.5% fee. So our revenue is actually 0.45%, and then we pay 10% to the government. But we don't charge a 10% GST on the full value of the Bitcoin that was sold. Now, for the individuals that use Independent Reserve, it's, I guess, up to them whether or not they want to declare a GST obligation to the government on the value of the Bitcoin that they sell. However, because we have customers from all over the world, and there's no way for any individual that trades to know where the other person was on the opposite side of their trade, they actually have a very strong case to the ATO if they were ever to be asked about this by the ATO, and I've never heard of anyone actually being asked, that they could say because they don't know whether the other side of the trade was done by a person in Australia, because there isn't any way that they can know, then they can't be sure whether or not they're liable for GST, and therefore they don't have to pay GST. So this is kind of a loophole that is there, and it's kind of we haven't had any issues with this since we've launched like over 2.5 years ago. So this is how we get around having to charge GST.
Okay. Do you guys also have a referral system or a bonus system?
Yes, we do. So if you create an account on Independent Reserve, on the settings page, there is a referral program tab. And this will show you your referral code. And you can basically give that code to your friends. And then anyone that creates an account with your referral code, you will receive 50% of all the fees that we charge that person for a 90-day period. And we also on that screen, you'll be able to see exactly how much revenue you've made from anybody that you've referred, and you'll be able to see a full transaction history of all the referral fees that you've received in your account.
Okay, great. You did mention before, but we'll go into some banking questions because
Sure.
at the moment there are a few exchanges that are having a bit of problems and stuff. Can you just explain your current banking structure, including deposits and withdrawal types?
Sure. So we have relationships with, I think, 4 different banks in Australia. One of these banks allows us to also have multi-currency accounts. This is what allows us to have USD and NZD accounts. But most of our users deposit AUD because most of our users are based in Australia. So we take AUD deposits either as an EFT deposit or a poly payments deposit. So I guess most deposits clear within 1 business day. A poly payments deposit clears immediately as long as it's within $5,000 in a 24-hour period. For international customers, they can deposit via a SWIFT transfer, and usually this takes 1 to 2 business days, but it's an international transfer which gets routed through a whole bunch of banks, so every now and then they do take a little bit longer.
Do you just want to explain a little bit what the poly payments are for people who haven't used them?
So poly payments are kind of an interesting system run by Australia Post. I remember the first time I used the system, probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I was actually a little bit shocked by how it worked. It launches kind of like a plugin in your browser, which kind of hijacks your internet banking session, as in you actually log onto your internet banking using the poly payments plugin, and the poly payments plugin basically can see the amounts and can basically view the transaction that you've entered into internet banking, and it enforces the transaction to be sent to the account of the website that basically launched the poly payments plugin. So if you make a deposit via poly payments from Independent Reserve, you click a button on the Independent Reserve website, that launches the poly payments pop-up, which then basically prompts you to log onto your internet banking. You make an EFT transaction to our account. Poly payments confirms to us that this transaction has been made, and we credit your account immediately, although I guess technically we don't receive the funds until the funds clear in our account, which could be 24 hours. So yeah, it kind of monitors your internet banking session and provides assurance to us that you've actually made a transaction, which allows us to credit your account immediately. It's as I said, it's an interesting system. The first time I used it, I was a little bit unsure, but it's been around for a long time, and a lot of people like it. So yeah, that's poly payments.
Are your deposits and withdrawals system settled, or are they manually processed by support staff?
So our Bitcoin withdrawals are processed automatically up to certain limits. So like pretty much all other exchanges, we have a cold storage wallet, we have a hot wallet. So there are times when there's not enough Bitcoin in the hot wallet, and we have to replenish that from our offline wallet. There are also restrictions about how much people can withdraw in a 24-hour period that's approved automatically before it needs approved by a human. And this is basically just to manage our own risk, to make sure that our hot wallet doesn't get emptied out like has happened to I think a few other exchanges in the past. But most, like say about 95% of Bitcoin withdrawals would be approved automatically and executed immediately. For fiat currency withdrawals, they're processed manually, and that's because the banks we use don't have an API that would allow us to connect to the bank and process the withdrawal automatically. But we do kind of pride ourselves on executing withdrawals on the same business day that they were created by the user. So as long as you create your withdrawal before about 4 p.m. or so, we would execute that before the so most banks stop processing transactions for about 6 p.m. So we would aim to get your withdrawal process before that, so you would receive it on the same business day in the evening, most likely.
Okay, that's great. when a customer deposits money other than Australian dollars, USD, or New Zealand dollars,
Mhm.
does it get converted to one of those set currency like AUD, or does it get rejected from your bank?
It'll most likely get rejected, and this is, I guess, something out of our control. But our bank's AUD account can only accept AUD, NZD can just accept NZD, and USD can just accept USD. Yeah, so what you would most likely find is that your funds would get refunded back to your account within about a week or so, and you'd probably also find that the banks would have charged you a fee to refund those funds.
Okay. One of the last banking questions. Do customers currently get the Australian government $100,000 guarantee on all deposits?
So the way that guarantee works is it guarantees the deposits in a bank account. So we've spread our funds over multiple accounts, and each of those accounts would have a guarantee of $100,000. However, I guess each of those accounts would also be holding more than $100,000, which means that, I guess, individual funds of the customer may not be, I guess, covered by the $100,000 guarantee because the funds in the account will be above $100,000. However, we are the only exchange in Australia, one of the very few exchanges in the world that actually where the client funds are held in a client trust account. So when you deposit AUD to Independent Reserve, you'd actually you may have noticed that the name of the bank account isn't Independent Reserve. It's actually Independent Reserve Client Monies Trust as a trustee for Independent Reserve. And what that means is that the funds in that account can't be used by us for any operational purposes. There's actually a trust deed that was drafted by one of our lawyers, which we had to give to our bank when we open up the account. And what it basically means is that if we were to ever become insolvent, for example, any funds that are held in a client trust account would first be distributed to the clients before any other creditors would have a claim on those funds. And also when we are audited, the auditors check that what we have in the client trust accounts matches our liabilities to our clients.
Okay, that would be interesting if there was ever a Mount Gox situation with you guys, but it seems like your client's money, we get it back first before, the pizza boy does.
Exactly, that's the idea, yep.
We've had some questions, leverage for US. Do you just want to explain what products you actually do provide and the currency pairs?
So leverage we do not provide. The main reason for that is that operating in Australia, we would require a derivatives AFSL license, which at the moment we do not have. So just to, I guess, explain that for anyone that's listening that's not from Australia, currently digital currency is unregulated in Australia. We are actually in discussions with regulators at pretty much all the time, and I'm about 95% sure that within the next 12 months there'll be various regulations in place, but at the moment it's an unregulated market. However, as soon as you start offering leverage, it doesn't really matter what you're offering it on, whether it's on trading Bitcoin or trading tables and chairs, you need a derivatives license from ASIC, and then it becomes a regulated market. And this is a license that we at the moment do not have, and this is why we're not offering anything other than basically just an order book exchange. And as for the currency pairs, so as I mentioned earlier, we have a multi-currency order book where all orders, no matter whether they were placed in AUD, USD, and NZD, get placed onto a single order book and converted into the currency that the customer is using. And we trade Bitcoin and Ethereum at the moment, and we're also looking at adding other currencies in the near future. So we're looking at Monero at the moment, and also having another look at Litecoin. We looked at yeah. So I mean, we're always kind of being asked of what other coins we can add. I guess each coin adds a little a little bit of overhead on our end. So we kind of add new coins when we think that the demand is there to warrant the extra overhead.
Do you offer any crypto trading pairs like Bitcoin, Ethereum?
At the moment, we don't know. And I guess the main reason for that is that we charge our fees in the fiat currency, and that really makes the accounting on our end a lot simpler. And I guess also if we did offer that, we'd be competing against, all the other big exchanges around the world, because it's very easy to move Bitcoin from, independent reserve to any other exchange in the world. So I guess what we offer that, the worldwide exchanges do not, is an easy way for Australians to deposit AUD and buy either Ethereum or Bitcoin, and then they can use that to buy any of the other currencies on any of the other exchanges like Poloniex, for example. It'd be very hard for us to compete against an exchange like that, because A, they have a lot more liquidity, and B, I guess there's very little reason for an Australian to not transfer their Bitcoin to an overseas exchange, because there's, I guess, it's a lot easier to transfer Ethereum or Bitcoin than it is to transfer USD or AUD.
Okay. I think that wraps up the banking questions, unless somebody else has something to post. We'll move on to some security questions. So
Sure.
can you explain how you ensure the safety of customers' Bitcoins and fiats from hacking and theft?
Yeah, sure. So I guess at the core of it, so just to give you, I guess, a little bit of background about myself. So I've worked in IT pretty much all my life. Prior to Independent Reserve, I ran an IT consultancy in Australia called Asia Australia Technology. And our kind of, the main thing we did was, I guess, build large kind of enterprise scale IT systems for banks, insurance companies, where, we I guess had a large amount of experience in, building very robust and secure systems. So when we built an Independent Reserve, we kind of built it in that way. So we spent probably about 18 months creating the platform. We had 8 developers working for 18 months to build Independent Reserve. And I guess it's built in a very robust and secure way. We're spread across, I think, 24 different servers across 2 different hosting companies. So we have encryption keys stored on servers in Australia. We have other encryption keys stored on servers in Hong Kong. And this is, I guess, just to manage the encryption of data in our hot wallet, and also, user data such as people's names, email addresses, all that kind of stuff. That's actually encrypted multiple times with different keys stored at different hosting providers, stored in Australia and also overseas. Now, we also have an offline wallet, as pretty much all other exchanges do. So probably about 95% of the Bitcoin that we have, and also the Ether that we have, is stored offline. So this is, of course, to prevent the circumstance where someone does manage to hack into our system. They're only able to access what's in the hot wallet. We also have a crowdsourced penetration testing. So if you can, so we use a company called Cobalt, which has basically penetration testers who try to find any issues in our system, and if they're able to, they receive a reward. And also, as I mentioned, our client funds are held in a client trust account, which restricts what we're able to do with those funds.
Okay, that's great. Do you currently have restrictions on IP address traveling traders that use VPNs or travel outside of the countries that they sign up with?
No, we have no restrictions in place for that. If you log in from an unfamiliar IP address, we may ask you a few extra questions, and this is basically questions. So usually when you log in, you'd be asked for your username, your password, your two-factor authentication code. But when you log in from an IP address range, that's different to any other IP address range that you've used in the past. We'd also ask you for a few extra bits and pieces like your date of birth and your postcode. And this is basically just to, I guess, add an extra layer of security of, another person trying to access your account.
Do you also monitor Bitcoin's deposits and withdrawals, where they've come from, kind of like Coinbase security?
No, we do not. We don't really look at where, once your Bitcoin leaves independent reserve, that's really the last time that we have a look at it, and we don't check to see where we've received your Bitcoin from.
What's your internal policies regarding law enforcement and government agencies like ATO, Centrelink, ASX, and banking?
So I assume you're asking about whether we disclose information if we were asked?
Yeah.
So I guess like any other business in Australia, if we're required to release information by law, then obviously we have to do that. However, we do have a privacy policy in place which protects your information to the point where we would not release it unless we were obligated to by law. So if we're asked to release information by one of these agencies, and not that we have, but if we were asked to, we would consult with our legal team, and we would only release this information if that was one of the things that we had to do, but we would not release it unless we had to.
Are you currently a member of the Financial Service Ombudsman, FOS, or any other regulators?
So we actually joined FOS when we launched back in 2014, and we were a member for about 2 or 3 months, and then at some point, basically FOS realized that Bitcoin was an unregulated industry, and they actually cancelled our membership. They said because we don't possess an AFSL, and we actually approached ASIC to get an AFSL, and ASIC said that Bitcoin does not constitute a designated service. I think those were the words that they used, and therefore an Australian Financial Services license is not required. Once that happened, then the Financial Services Ombudsman said because we don't have an AFSL and Bitcoin is not a designated service, we cannot be a member of FOS. Now, I think quite recently that may have changed. I'm actually a board member of ADCA, the Australian Digital Currency Commerce Association, and I do know that now FOS has come around where I think they're accepting membership from Bitcoin exchanges. So we'll be looking at this again very soon.
Yeah, that's great. One of the biggest debating points with Bitcoin at the moment is a scenario with a hard fork. So would you mind just explaining your stance on a hard fork and how it would impact your clients?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, obviously that's a bit of a mess, and hopefully it never happens. And it's now looking less and less likely that it will happen. Although, I guess there was a time about a month ago or so where it looked a lot more likely than how it looks now. And our policy is actually listed on our website. On the news page, we actually wrote a little article that explains what we would do. And like most other exchanges, we would have to halt deposits and withdrawals for a period of time. And how long this period of time would last, it's difficult to say. But basically, we could not allow deposits or withdrawals of Bitcoin until we were 100% sure that the Bitcoin network was basically working. Whether or not we would support deposits on both sides of the fork, well, that really depends on whether both sides of the fork remain active. The most likely scenario would be that one side of the fork would, maybe be active for a day or two, and then all the miners would switch to the fork with the most mining power because I guess once you remove the mining power from a fork, confirmations would take a lot longer because it takes longer and longer to mine a block until most likely one of the sides of the fork would just die, in which case we would just keep a balance on the side of the fork which was active. If both sides of the fork were to remain active, we would do our best to provide our users with a balance on each side of the fork. This would obviously take a little while for us to be able to implement, but we would do our absolute best to make that work as quickly as possible.
Okay. Do you guys currently have a mobile phone apps for Android OS?
We don't have an app. However, our website is quite responsive, so it works quite well on a phone, but we don't have an explicit app at the moment, no.
Okay. I've pretty much asked all the questions I can run off my head, but if you want to have a little bit of feedback with the community in the open questions, people can type them or ask away now.
Yeah, sure. Happy to answer any other questions. So there's one question here from Dan. Why do you think you have the international clients you do have? What sets you apart for them, if anything? So what we found is, I guess, that most of the international clients that we have, they tend to be quite experienced. I guess these people would have accounts on most exchanges around the world, and they're quite experienced in trading. And these people, I guess, look for arbitrage opportunities. So because the liquidity, I guess, on exchanges in Australia tends to be not as good as liquidity on exchanges in other areas of the world, there tend to be arbitrage opportunities that people can exploit if they also have accounts in other exchanges. So we have an API which most of our, I guess, international users would use, and they would have that would basically trade automatically across independent reserve and other exchanges to exploit these arbitrage opportunities. And because we accept USD, which I think makes us the only exchange in Australia which accepts USD, this makes it easy to arbitrage independent reserve against other exchanges around the world. So there's another question here about withdrawal limits. So when you first create your account, there is likely to be a deposit and so there's likely to be a deposit limit. So we usually limit new accounts to $10,000 per day. We can lift that once we've received at least one deposit from you, and this is mostly to make sure that the process for making deposits works, so that your bank is able to send funds to our bank. And once we're sure that works, we can increase that to $100,000 per day or more. As for withdrawal limits, no, we don't have any withdrawal limits at all. So there's another question here. Would it matter to your business in event of a fork, who initiates it and the other specifics of the circumstance of it? So as I mentioned before, if there was a fork in Bitcoin, we would, I guess, take a wait and see approach and see where the market goes. We would do, I guess, what we feel is the best thing to do by our customers. We could consult our customers as well. Yeah, we're not that interested in the politics of a fork. We're more interested in making sure we do the right thing by our customers. What if a fork is in such a manner that as it receives no market support? If there is no market support for a fork, that would most likely mean that only one side of the fork would be active and the other side of the fork would not have any value. So we would, in that case, support the active side of the fork. There is a $60 spread on your order book at the moment. Is this normal because independent reserve is not as liquid as other exchanges? So what we've experienced over the last 2 or 3 days is a very large influx in AUD deposits. So this has actually created a bit of a shortage on the sell side of our order book. And this is basically one of the arbitrage opportunities that I was mentioning before. So what tends to happen on our exchange is we get more people wanting to buy than we have people wanting to sell. So this is a really good opportunity, I guess, for anyone that has Bitcoin that they want to sell, because often you'd be able to sell at a much higher price at independent reserve than you could on other exchanges, which have more liquidity and smaller spreads. How does your exchange security stack up to the best practices, and which exchange would you speculate has the best overall security in place? So as I mentioned before, our exchange is built in a very robust manner. So we have encryption keys spread across multiple hosting providers. We have about 24 servers in our production environment at the moment. We replicate all our data across 2 different data centers. Most of our funds are held offline. And also we've been operating for almost 3 years now without any incidents at all. So I think our security is pretty good. As to which exchange would you speculate has the best overall security in place? Look, that's really difficult to say. I mean, when you use any system, all you really see is the user interface of that system. It's pretty hard to know what lies beneath. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone's invulnerable from a hack. It's comes down to, I guess, not being complacent, remaining vigilant, you know, making sure that you follow your own security procedures, making sure, you know, you keep your servers patched, making sure when you release new features, they're code reviewed by multiple developers. So it's really hard to say who has the best security. But I think our security is quite good. I can sleep at night very easily. Do you have fees for special circumstances, i.e. transferring between NZD and AUD? So, okay, so I guess there's a few parts to that question. So I guess the first part is if you deposit NZD into our exchange, for deposit amounts under $5,000, we charge a $15 NZD fee. And this is basically to cover the fee charged by our bank for receiving that deposit. If you deposit an amount larger than that, we waive that fee and we basically absorb the fee that's charged by our bank. Now, when you buy Bitcoin on independent reserve, you buy it from our multi-currency order book. So you may be buying from a person in New Zealand, in which case that person would receive NZD. You may be buying from a person in Australia, in which case that person receives AUD. So we actually do an NZD to AUD conversion in the back end, which is transparent to our users. The FX rates that we use are listed on our website. So if you go to our help page, there's an FX rates link where we display our FX rates. These update every few hours. I'm not sure what they are right now. They're basically the FX rates that we receive from our FX provider, which does the FX for us. To withdraw NZD to a New Zealand account, we charge a $20 fee, and this is also to cover the SWIFT fee that's charged by our bank. So basically all the fees for deposits and withdrawals, they're fees that we need to charge because we are charged those fees ourselves by our bank, which is unfortunate, but banks do charge a lot of fees, unfortunately.
Was there any other questions anyone else wants to ask?
Any upcoming features, products, derivatives, tech, or any kind? So we are looking at adding other coins. So Monero and Litecoin are probably the ones that we're looking at the moment. As for derivatives, as I mentioned before, because we're based in Australia, it's actually quite tricky to add any derivatives. It would require us to have an AFSL license, which is quite an expensive process. So this is why you're not seeing any exchanges in Australia offering anything other than just a easy way to trade Bitcoin. What's the ask right now in USD? Just curious. I'll open an account when WhalePool gives me a referral code. If you open up our website, click on the market page, you'll see the order book. I don't have it in front of me right now.
Ask is USD is 1500.
Yeah, this was fun. Really enjoyed the experience.
Yeah.
yes.
Thanks for the chat, Adrian.
Yeah, cheers,
For the
guys.
future, what's the best way for customers to get in contact with you?
I guess the easiest way is, I mean, you can call the number on the website, but being a small company, we can't always answer the phones. So the easiest way is either to email us at, there's an email address on our website, or to just open up an account, and there's a support screen that we have. And this is, I guess, the most secure way to ask any questions, because all your information is encrypted, the messages are encrypted, you're not emailing any personal information. So the support screen, once you have an account, is definitely the best way to get in touch with us. And we try to respond to support messages within an hour during Australian business hours, and often a lot later than that. But we usually go to bed around midnight or so.
No problems, but I think we all appreciate you coming in, spreading the word
Cheers,
about
guys.
local currency and local exchanges as well. So thanks for that.
I appreciate the opportunity. It was fun.
Thank you very much.